Perimenopausal Athletes and Beyond, a masterclass series. Yeah, we are. And bringing together experts in mindset. I don't know which way the camera is going to go, but this is Lisa Lopez, expert in mindset, nutrition, training, and recovery. And my name is Tennille Hoogland. I am the owner and the founder of Element Sports Coaching, and that focuses on female athletes in perimenopause and beyond. And today, yes, here's Lisa Lopez. I can't wait to dig into who you are. As you know, we're pretty energetic, highly dance ready kind of individuals. So welcome.
Yeah. Are we going to dance right now? Are we going to you said dance. Are we going to do a little shimmy back and forth? Or let's just set the stage. Let's bring the energy to this conversation right now.
Oh, we've got it. Let me tell you, everybody listening in, if you're listening to the audio or, you're doing something else, just know we are jiving with you. And that's where we're going to take you today because, well, let me first actually just tell you a little bit more about Lisa. Lisa is a certified happiness coach. Hold that thought, because we're going to ask her what that means. She's a professional mentor coach, mental fitness trainer. She has completed over 50 marathons, 10 ultra marathons, and is an Iron Woman athlete. She is a Boston Marathon finisher. She loves movement, obviously. She helps female midlife professionals transform from feeling stuck, unmotivated, and low energy into true happiness. I can't wait to talk about this. Principles of mindful movement are at the core of what she does, positive intelligence and evidence-based strategies from the science of happiness. Beautiful. So tell us, just to give us kind of a grounding in, what does it mean to be a certified happiness coach?
Yeah, thank you so much for the amazing intro, for one, and for asking that question. Thank you. I get this a lot. What's a happiness coach? Is that a real job? Yes, it is. It's an amazing job. Number one, it's a real title. I didn't make it up.
Yeah.
So what a certified happiness coach is. So I am a certified life coach through the International Coaching Federation. So I am certified at that level, but a happiness coach is someone who's done extensive training in the science of happiness. So for those of you that aren't familiar, that there's actually a branch of science specifically for happiness. Happiness has been studied at Harvard for over 80 years. And what has emerged from that research are certain specific habits and behaviors that, when you apply them to your life consistently, will result in you achieving greater happiness in your life. So I specifically have studied in that, as well as positive psychology. And so those two branches kind of come together to embody the science of happiness. And so that's what I work with my clients on, is teaching them those strategies, in addition to help get them really clear on what happiness specifically means for them. So it's really a partnership of the science and then personal choices about what happiness feels like for them in their lives.
Wow, that's really cool.
Isn't it?
Those that are listening that are coaches already and want to add on some really interesting ways, like I can surmise what they might be, but I mean, to really plug into a science specifically about happiness and what, that I would think of connection and community. And, can you just share with us some of the main principles when we think about, from the 80 years of Harvard? And I do it like it is seriously what we look for, and trying to say, well, how do I find my happy place? How do I find, what does that mean? Is it a place? I don't know. So I know this is going off of our interview, questions that we've prepared already, but, can you just give us, when somebody would see you, are there like tenets? Like in my business, I have mindset, nutrition, training, recovery. Do you have these sort of main pillars that you're talking about?
Right. Well, so in my practice, it's mindful movement, it's the science of happiness, and it's mindset, which embodies emotional energy as well as positive intelligence. So those are the pillars of my practice. Now, when it comes to the science of happiness, yes, there's definitely kind of a spectrum of certain behaviors that will, again, result in greater happiness. Some of those, like you mentioned, obviously connection is the number one predictor of happiness in people's lives, which we all took a huge hit, obviously, in COVID. So it's really about now rebuilding those connections for my clients. The other one is gratitude, right? Practicing gratitude regularly, mindfulness, movement, those kind of things. So those are kind of a few of the things that I work with my clients on. But the number one thing that I think is important to understand when it comes to this work is being intentional. We plan our workday, we plan our workouts, we even plan our funerals, but we don't plan our happiness. And why we don't is just beyond me, because this is what we're all really working towards, and all the things that we do is achieving happiness. So why not plan it? So that's really where I come in as a happiness coach, is helping people give themselves permission to make their happiness their priority.
Oh, that's so cool. I absolutely, and in a really holistic way, I was having a conversation with my husband the other day, and it was like, it was to the point, because, part of my framework it's called ACET anyways, awareness, connection, and intention, execute, but with intention and to be targeted. And so I was like, I have this whole theory about, for my athletes, and are we living our life this way? Are we making sure that all the decisions that, we're making together are aligned? And so I think that this is probably, I would love to, it's such an amazing thing to have support on and to have coaching on, because it's that real perspective that you're bringing in. Okay, now that we know exactly what it is that you do, let's get into the questions. Absolutely. Yeah, let's get into the questions, because it's super fun. So what we want to dive into today is really understanding this relationship between the push and the pull, but specifically on motivation. We as athletes think about it so much into our physical push and then the physical recovery. But I think, and I'm not going to put words into your mouth, but I want to, the idea of motivation, because you're focused on the mental fitness of this. So help share with us just a little bit what you're thinking of when you think of that push and pull of motivation and the relationship there.
Yeah, so motivation exists entirely in our brain and mindset. And so when you really understand how it does work in your brain and how to leverage it and partner it together, then you can experience greater happiness in your training. And so this really came from me getting incredibly burnt out. I've done a lot of events in my life. I arrived at a place where I was not happy. As soon as and I'm sure a lot of your athletes can relate to this, but literally I crossed the finish line of my Ironman event and looked down at my watch, and the first thing I thought was I could have done better. Now that, and so that for me was a pivotal moment where I had to check in with myself and say, why am I doing this again? Am I letting my ego drive these actions, or is it coming from a place of my heart, where it makes me feel good about myself? It makes me feel inspired. It taps into that love of the experience. And at that time, the answer was no. It wasn't doing that for me. It was actually incredibly destructive for me. And part of that was also creating a training plan that leveraged guilt and fear and willpower, and not partnering it with things like inspiration and joy and fun and excitement and connection. And so I really started to look at the brain science behind that. What is out there? How does it exist? How can I change this up so I can really tap into the true essence of why I'm doing all of these things, right?
I'm taking I actually am already like, look, people, so get your notes, get your pen and paper. So you've said two things that I want to dig into a little bit further. The one was the ego driving. I can't remember exactly, the ego driving your participation. Let's just say it was that. And then fear, guilt, and willpower. Can we talk about, maybe they're probably linked a little bit there, but can you talk and dig into a little bit more about those 2 points that you specifically referred to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think what starts off as a beautiful, kind of a beautiful endeavor of wanting to push past your limits and see what's possible, which comes from a place of real inspiration and
Yeah.
growth opportunity, can quickly turn pretty ugly. And when I talk about that, what I mean is, with all the accolades and with us doing what only a small percentage of humans do, there also creates this really this expectation that without us identifying as that amazing athlete or finishing under that certain time, then who are we? Right. So every conversation, it starts with people of, what are you doing now?
Yeah.
What race are you doing? How fast did you finish? Right. And then all of a sudden it starts to cultivate this fear. So what started off as really beautiful in essence now turns to be very destructive to us emotionally, because if we aren't finishing within that time frame, or we're not placing, or we're not doing these things, then will people care about us? Will people ask those questions, right? So it's in a really emotional place, and it's so fear-based. And so that when we know it's fear-based, we know the ego has arrived, and we know that, go ahead.
Yeah. So fear-based in a sense of like fear that people won't care about us, like or fear that we lost that identity of I linked onto this performance marker.
Yeah, it really has to do with the identity piece. In terms of who am I if I'm not this amazing athlete, right? So here's the difference. When you identify, when it's almost like you're investing all your happiness in your performance.
Yeah.
Okay. Versus recognizing that that's what you do. That's not who you are. Who you are the attributes that allow you to deliver in that way. You are courage. You are perseverance, you are strength, you are consciousness, like you are all of these things, but you're not just the athlete. That's just what you use those things to do, right? So when I talk about that, that is a lot of it has to do with when it comes to motivation. If you are leveraging fear of disappointment, fear of not being good enough, that is something that can really adversely affect your training, right? It just comes from a place where you're going to experience that guilt I talked about when you're not doing the things that you think you should do. Yeah. Versus partnering them with the things that you really want to do, kind of getting back to that place. So it's having that awareness, and you can really understand that in a lot of ways, but mostly it's about how you're feeling while you're training.
So you just perfect segue. Thank you very much. On to how do we become more aware of, like, we talk about the messages that we're giving ourselves, but one of the biggest challenge that I know a lot of us have is to have enough quiet to actually hear the messages, or to have enough space that we can actually start acknowledging and becoming aware of those things. How do you support your clients in starting to develop that awareness?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And it really is a habit that we've created to focus on what we're not doing versus on what we are doing. And so one of the things that I work with my clients is the 1-to-2 ratio, which is for every one negative judgment that you apply to yourself or your workouts, you have to partner it with 2 amazing things that you're doing. Okay.
Hey.
So that's kind of intro to it. Just creating the habit of awareness, and really allowing yourself to feel that, the celebration does not happen at the finish line. The celebration happens every time you get up, every time you go out, every time you complete something, regardless if it's the mileage you hope to do or the mileage you actually did. So it's really cultivating that creation of celebration and identifying the progress.
Yeah, I think that is so unbelievably important. Like and I wonder how, and then again, this is coming just off the top of my head a little bit, but like when we want to celebrate once we've accomplished something, it's again going back to the performance-based outcome model. And we will celebrate when the job is done. We will celebrate when we finally make it across the finish line. And I think that what you're telling us is so incredibly valuable. And within that too, it's also releasing this idea of not being seen this idea of it's best to be humble. Like it's, these are all good. This is what a good female does, is like, we need to feel maybe, and I would love it if you talk a little bit about this. We want to feel big in our own eyes, not in the eyes of others. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how can we start to feel okay with saying, I totally kick butt on that?
Yeah.
Like, I totally can, jive to this because I've got it. And whatever you got is.
Yeah, I love it. It's absolutely so true that we have been socialized to believe that is not a good thing to celebrate ourselves, that's ego driven, right?
That's
or like
ego driven,
right,
yeah.
or that's maybe being like, oh, that's less ladylike to be that way, to brag about yourself, to point out your accomplishments in that way. And so it really does take practice. I'm going to share with you something that I just really recently started.
Yeah.
That I love, and I really encourage your listeners and viewers to maybe purchase this book. Yeah. But it's by Mel Robbins. It's called The High Five Habit. And I've started doing this with my clients, and it's a really small thing that she encourages you to do through her work. Yeah. And it's the power of the high five. Now, as athletes and spectators and fans and, encouragers of other athletes out there, the high five is such a part of our culture.
Yeah.
You did a good job, right? You did a good job. You're out there, high five. And when you're running, you're training, you're doing it, somebody gives you a high five, it's a boost of confidence, right? It's an acknowledgement. It feels amazing. And we give them out to everyone. Yes. Here's the reality though. We don't give them to ourselves.
No.
We don't give a high five to ourselves, even though we know this is a habit that we've already created. Mm-hmm. So why not give it to ourselves? So in the morning, the whole point of the book is, in the morning, stand in front of the mirror, look beyond you could be butt naked, look beyond your body into the soul, into the power, into all the wonderful strengths that you have as a woman, as an athlete, mother, partner, sister, friend, and give yourself a high five. Give yourself a high five and say whatever you need to hear that day. You are badass. You are capable. You are enough. You got this. Whatever it is, just do it. Just do it in the morning and see how differently you start to feel. And it really starts in those little increments, right? Because to think about it as completely just changing feels overwhelming. We feel guilt and shame, but when we do it in little increments like that, we start to build our confidence that it's actually possible that we think differently about who we are.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And you know what, I'm reflecting on another interview that we had with Charlotte Therup, and she is a mindfulness expert, and she talks about dear body, and her dear body is taking your hand and putting it on your body. And sometimes we may, and I'm just thinking, like, sometimes we might not have the energy or be in the emotional state to give, like, yes, like high five, happy day, like we've got this kind of, energy, mm-hmm. But it can also be the high five. Mm-hmm. I hear you.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm settling in, but I love it that, we're bringing these two interviews together of just like this compassionate self, but also this like, wow, you also can be like, let's get back to our dancing and our energy and our feeling of like, I just did that. That's awesome.
Right. Well, also understand the science behind the high five, that it's already ingrained in our brain to elicit positive emotion. Okay. So it's not a new habit. This is actually something that we already relate to as a celebratory action, as acknowledgement, as gratitude, as accomplishment. Right. So that act of giving yourself a high five, it's really going to release what's already in your brain.
That's neat.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, though, it's really about that. It's really about how can we create little things that start to build our confidence around what we already know to be true, give ourselves permission to celebrate ourselves in that way, and then also enroll other people to do it too. You know, as women, we want to empower each other. We want to partner with each other. We want to create a culture of celebration. Where we're not ashamed to be incredibly visible in our accomplishments, right? So the more we have conversations like this, the more maybe we do five challenge together or whatever it is for us, then we start to change the way that we think about ourselves inside our heads.
Yeah, it's so that's so cool. All right, you had mentioned two other things that I want to dive in a little bit into a bit further, and one of them is guilt, and the other one that I want to talk about is willpower. Just to dive in a little bit deeper on those two ideas of. So coming again to, you know, where we started this conversation is we're thinking about motivation. We're thinking about the push and the pull of the motivation and why we don't want to stay in a place of guilt or, well, my coach told me to do this and I'll feel really guilty to do it, as opposed to coming into the whether this is good for you at that point in this, because look at perimenopause, you're not going to be in a straight line. Right? We're not going to fit to the plan. We have to have the plan fit us, you know, and this idea of releasing the guilt, or can you talk a little bit more about that push and the pull of guilt as a piece of understanding how we're motivated?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so let's just be clear. So we all need a push. I don't want to say like push is just, you know, it's never going to be a push. When you're training, you are absolutely going to leverage that push. And that push does come from fear, right? Fear you're not going to train enough. Fear you're not going to cross the finish line. A fear that you may get injured if you don't put in the time. Fear that you will judge yourself or others will judge you, or you'll disappoint yourself or others, right? So that is the push. And the push comes from our very primal brain. You know, it's really tapped into the fight or flight mechanism of safety and protection. And that's an important part of it. We need that. We need that to get started. Motivation often doesn't come first. Most of the time, motivation doesn't come first. It requires the push, okay? And then once you get started, right, you start to do your training, you're like, oh, I feel good, I'm feeling good. Yeah. I had a great run or swim or bike, whatever it is, I'm feeling good in my body. Then we're feeling more motivation, right? But here's the key is we don't want to continue to leverage the push because the push is willpower. And what we know without a doubt, research has proven it, is willpower is an exhaustible resource, okay? And so what happens with that is when you're leveraging the push as the only mechanism during your training is you're going to have your highs and lows, right? You're going to feel good and you're going to feel bad, because you run out of willpower. I mean, in addition to training, you have life, right? You have all the things that happen. And that's why a lot of times, even in your workday, right? When you wake up in the morning, you're feeling great. You know, let's just use nutrition. Maybe you've changed your eating habits and you're really aligned and feeling great early on in the day because you have a lot of willpower. Later on in the day, all of a sudden your willpower has been exhausted because, you know, you've been working, using all that brain power. You haven't taken any naps, you haven't recharged or anything like that. By the end of the day, you're like, gosh, those snacks are looking pretty good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally tapped out, right? Like just go, oh, well, whatever. Tomorrow's a new day. Exactly. Right?
The same goes with your training. If you're constantly leveraging just willpower, you're going to be feeling, you're going to hit those walls. You're going to start to beat yourself up, right? It's coming from this place of fear. That's where the guilt comes in. Like, man, you know, you weren't able to hit your pace, or you weren't able to achieve those miles that you went out for today, you know? And so what I'm encouraging people to do is understand there's another option. And the other option, the partner option, is the pull, which is, how do you create a relationship between that push and pull? How do you create inspiration in your workouts? What helps you to tap into that motivation, tap into that love, tap into that sense of purpose that really inspires you from a much different place? Inspiration is like this, push is like this, right? Yeah. So you can use the push to get started, but then especially as you're deeper into your training, the longer mileages, when things are getting harder, how can you then create your training in such a way that now you're in that pull, right? Maybe, and we talked about this when we were kind of talking earlier, which is like, for me, it's connection. If I can partner with other people to train, that really helps me, especially people who embody the same mindset. Maybe it's nature, maybe it's whatever. I'm not sure what it is for you, but it's a feeling, right? It's a feeling that says, you know what, I can feel excited about this. I can feel like it's okay, even if I don't hit my mark, right? It's a place that you get to with your training.
Oh, I love this. I have this image of Alison Mackis is she's she's a runner, and she has qualified for the Olympic trials for the US so many times it's hard to count. And one of the things that she taught me, and I'm just going to demonstrate it because it's a little bit of a thing. So she taught me, whenever you're running up a hill, to like grab the rope. You're trying to grab the rope. You're pulling yourself. It's not just pushing yourself. You're grabbing the rope. And so as you were speaking, I just was like coming into this image of that Alison gave me of pulling yourself up. I've given it to so many of my athletes of where, come into me, come into me, come into me, come into me, come into me. And I just like, for all the athletes that are listening, I'm like stretching out my hand, I'm grabbing a rope and pulling it toward me if you can't see it. And this idea is so powerful in an imagery kind of way. And you know, when we think about the connection points, or when we think about where it's a really hard day of training, but you get to be in the trees. Like I'm now you're talking my language. It's just like, how do I get going when you know, everything is coming around? Like, that's so fun.
Oh, I love that. I love that visualization. And it is getting creative, and it is, you use the word fun. Okay, we have to give ourselves permission to have fun in our training. We really do. I mean, the more playfulness you can, I mean, I would do dance parties like every 5 miles, just stop and like shimmy and do like something fun. You know what I mean? Just something to kind of tap back into, you know, that childlike love of being outdoors, moving my body, feeling that youthfulness, the ability, the strength, all of those things that we really are, but we get so caught up in our head that we forget that. We forget that this is an honor and a privilege to be able to do these things still in our life.
Yeah.
Tapping into that gratitude and being able to express that joy, right? So the more ways that you can do that, I love that visualization. You know, I'm a dance party girl. You know, sometimes I would do things like I would create my route around friends' houses, and I'd run up and high five them, or we do a little like they'd run outside and cheer me on when I was doing things. That would be another way to, and you know, it would be more of an inspiration thing. So yeah, that's what I invite you to ask yourself, how do you want to feel? Well, listen, life is too short.
Yeah.
It's too short. And we spend so much time training, so much of our time training. What do you want to experience? You are in charge of that. But again, I'm going to use the word again. It takes intention. If you go out and you aren't thinking about these kind of things, then you are going to leverage willpower, and guilt is going to descend upon you. You know, that judgment, that self-judgment will happen for you, because that's how our brains are wired. We have a negativity bias that exists in our brains.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the prevalent energy, emotional energy that runs through our brains right now. The only way we change that is if we plan something differently and we start to create that habit.
There's something, thank you for pointing out that negativity bias, because I think it's also kind of grounds us in this idea of like, it's normal. Like, totally. If you feel like you're going in, like, and you're just like, why am I so this way? It's like, well, you know, it's kind of human. And if you're intentional, like you're saying, then we can get around and shape how we can feel. Question on the science, and I'm not going to probably ask this exactly correctly, so I'll ask you to guide me. Okay, so when we think of, you talked about the mind-body connection, and when I think of the brain, it's, you're talking about willpower. And if you hold I learned this just recently, like when you talk about the amygdala hijack, right? Mm-hmm. So we have our brainstem, if that's from your wrist down, and then and this is going to be your fight and flight. This is where we kind of are really getting that push, like we've got power and everything. Then in the middle of the brain is all your emotional center. And then the outer side of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, is where we do our thinking and our rationalization. Do you use this sort of principle in your coaching, or is this is part of what you're talking about in terms of like the actual science of, we want to get into our emotional brain of inspiration and not get totally hijacked so we can't think it, because our thinking, if we get down into that tornado of negative thought, and we can't, in like a toddler tantrums, I know I've felt this. It's just like, I can't get out of it. I'm just in such a space, when we have to come out of it through 20-second hugs or dance parties or something, to try to get out of this space. Is that kind of what you're also thinking about in terms of like how we understand our body and the science of our brain?
Yeah. So first of all, that was beautifully done.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so proud of you. That's very accurate and such a great way to do it. So, I really think about it in terms of hormones, okay? And as far as chemicals in our brain. Mm-hmm. So when you are in your fight or flight mechanism, you need to understand that you are dumping tons of cortisol into your body, right, which is destructive to our cells. You are breaking down your cells
at certain levels. We love cortisol, but if we're overdo it,
that's why I'm like, willpower is great in certain amounts. Okay. In a certain amount, it's great. But over time, what we know is it can be destructive to us, right? When you're tapping into the inspiration, you are dumping dopamine, right? And other serotonin and other things into your body, which are feel good, which allow you to expand what's possible. The cortisol and the stress reaction, it's like putting blinders on. All you can see is option A and B, right? Either you're all in or you're all out. Like either you win or you fail. When you tap into this other place, you're like, you know what? There's actually a spectrum of things that can happen between that. And they're all okay. They're all okay. And they actually, you being in a place where you're feeling better will result in greater success versus if you're not feeling better and trying to force a success. So it's almost like you can, I want to be very clear about this. You can absolutely be successful using willpower. Absolutely. We see
I did it for a long time.
Yeah. You can absolutely do that. Okay.
Yeah. It's how so many run, but you will burn out.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
And you won't keep going or you'll get injured.
And you get injured. Exactly. Right. So I don't want to say that you can't be successful this way. Yeah. You absolutely can be successful that way. But the way where you actually can have more sustainable, long-term good health and happiness is this other way. Now, this may take a little bit more planning and being more intentional, a little bit more effort in a different way, but the payoff is so much greater and it's costing you so much less in the long run. It really is.
Well, and I think of specifically about the athletes in the beyond, both in perimenopause and beyond. But I know there's a shift for many, not for all, but for many females that go from, I was driven for a specific goal, and now I'm driven for longevity. And I'm driven because I want to stay active well into my 70s, 80s, 90s, like whatever, it's infinite. And so how do I do that, Tennille? How do I tap into that? And really where you're coming in and encouraging us is that it's not, we're not into quick fixes here. This is not, don't go to Lisa Lopez if you want, the quick fix. Non-intentional, if you want to just we can drive. And one of the things, and I think that it's really important to note, is that any coach in terms of a physical sense, but even I think as what you're pointing out into a mental fitness thing, any coach can tap into the drive really hard.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a really special relationship and time and conversation and partnership to tap into the longevity of how we go through the flows.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. Absolutely true.
And so when you're thinking about relationship with yourself and with coach and with anything really, it's like, well, what am I after? Am I going to just give her for this one 5K? I'm going to go for the 5K. I'm just going to really get these next couple of months down and then be done. Am I going to, whatever it might be, maybe that's where you need to tap into, but that's not where you're going to be able to keep going. And that's where we fall off. I think what a powerful conversation, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for hosting it.
This is apparently I love this stuff. So in any case, all right. So I have one more question for you before I ask you about your free gift.
Okay, cool.
Was there a single moment, and this is to all the experts, was there a single moment in time that you really came into the space of, I need to do this. I need to really delve in and support females in finding this other side, this happiness, this mental fitness, this, the coaching that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to make this quick because it could be a long story, but I actually came into life coaching as a result of a personal crisis in my life, which is on my son's 15th birthday, we get a call from juvenile hall and he had been arrested. So as you can imagine, let me just tell you real quick. I mean, we were incredibly involved. I was PTA president, booster president, like all of the things all the boxes that you check to think you're being a good parent. They were all checked. We thought he was sleeping in his room across the hall, come to find out he'd been arrested. So what ensued was kind of the collapse of my family. My son was, incarcerated. My son lost his brother. We lost our son. And as a part of his rehabilitation and recovery, we actually negotiated with the courts to send him to kind of a behavioral modification program, like a boarding school for troubled teens. As a result of that, we all had to attend an immersive experiential life coaching program. And at the time I had never heard of life coaching before, but I went because I entered the program because I truly believed I was there to save my son. Well, on completion of the program, I realized I was there to save myself.
Oh my goodness, Lisa.
I felt from my experience so completely passionate that every man, woman, and child should have access to a life coach. And I wanted to be part of that solution. And so that's when I made the commitment to, get certified, leave my super cushy hospital job, and then dedicate my life to life coaching. And so that was my moment when it came to me.
Oh my gosh. Through challenge, like just for anybody that is going through incredible challenge, like to take on that story and to hear the inspiration from where it led you and the powerful message. Like we've just had so much fun, right? We're talking about happiness and all these things, and you get to share. You have thousands of followers in your life now because of something that could have, like, is your son doing well now? How's your family now? I have to ask.
I know everybody wants another question. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that, life coaching saved my family, my entire family. And my son is now like an inspirational speaker. He has 2 sons of his own, and his entire life changed for the better. I just want to add to this, at the time when we made that decision, it was very difficult for our family to make that decision, obviously. At the time he hung out with these 5 kids. Now 3 of those children are dead and 2 are in life prison. So it really saved his life.
Well, thank you. I'm really, really happy that you were able to take on, and that you had the strength and the all the things that you need. I'm not even exactly sure all the things that you needed to make a big difference in your life and in the life of your family. And you all did the work, obviously, because it's all each of you doing the work. So
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to hear that's the result, and thrilled that you get to be here with us today to tell that
Yeah.
story.
Me
So,
too.
yay! All right. So you have a free gift that you are sharing.
Free gift time.
It's free gift time. So it's called a happiness planner. Tell me about what this, if people want to click on the link below, what does a happiness planner look like, or what are they going to get?
Yeah, it's just a wonderful document. So I just created this happiness planner. This is really about that intentional piece.
Okay.
It's everything that we talked about today. It's going to take you through reflection and celebration and gratitude. It's going to take you through the planning process of how to identify your happiness and then how to integrate that into your life on a regular basis. So it is a PDF. You kind of just go through the steps. You can do this by yourself. You can do this with girlfriends. You can do this with your family. But it's something that you can reuse over and over again, revisit throughout the year. But I'm really proud of this tool because, again, it does embody everything that I do with my coaching, and it really helps you have a holistic approach to how to integrate happiness into your life. So I hope everybody enjoys it.
Yeah, and to take it on, people. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just so delighted that you said yes. So thank you again.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.